Champagne problems? We've all got them, and sometimes they happen in the kitchen. Welcome back to the second installment of our sparkling wine series. Today is all about how to pair champagne with food, so stick around because there are some delicious surprises ahead. So last week I explained how sparkling wines are made, how all those tiny little bubbles end up in there. If you haven't seen the video or read the Ultimate Sparkling Wine Guide on the DiVino blog, I recommend it. The link is right down there in the description, and while you're there, hit me with a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. Champagne gets its bubbles from a second fermentation that happens in the bottle. This is referred to as the traditional method, the classic method, the champagne method, and the champenoise method. They're all words for the same thing. When the fermentation starts up again in the space of this tiny little bottle, you can imagine that the pressure really starts to build. Champagne sits on the yeast or the lees for at least 30 months. That is almost 3 years. That means that champagne and wines made in the classic method, like cava and crème, are extremely fizzy. The bubbles are tight and tiny, and they last for a very long time. You can really feel it on your palate. Food pairing is all about balance, and while a blast of effervescence might feel refreshing, it can also feel abrasive on your palate. That said, champagne, just like other wines and people, ages. So over time, the harsher elements like acidity and effervescence start to relax. Keep that in mind when pairing champagne with food. There really is a champagne for every moment, but it's gotta be the right champagne. Now, let's talk about sugar. During this re-fermentation process, the yeast eats up all of the remaining sugar in the grape juice. That means most champagnes on the market are brut or extra brut, that is, pretty dry. You can read more about the sugar scale of sparkling wines on the DiVino blog. The link is right down there. Off-dry and sweeter champagnes do exist, and they make wonderful pairings for desserts and cheese plates. All of that fizz kind of helps balance out the sugar in the sweeter versions of champagne, and they are a lot more versatile than you might think. What is more romantic than champagne and strawberries? Well, in concept, sure, but imagine all of that dryness, acidity, and intense fizz alongside a tart berry. The same goes for a chocolate-dipped strawberry. You might think that the driest champagne would balance out all that sugar, and it will, but not necessarily in a good way. It could totally clash on your palate, and that's not doing any favors for those flavors of luscious fruit and deep, dark chocolate. An off-dry or demi-sec champagne will be a much more harmonious pairing. And don't worry, the effervescence even in a demi-sec champagne will still balance out some of that sugar, and that will leave your palate lingering with fresh fruit flavors and yearning for more. And what is more romantic than that? A classic Billecart-Salmon Brut Réserve. Reserve in champagne simply means that a portion of the grapes in the cuvée of the base wine are high quality and or aged. They are set aside or reserved every year to keep a balance and consistency in the final product. This wine smells fresh and bright with very subtle toasty notes and a lot of crisp green pear and apple. The bubbles are very small and tight, but not oppressive. It's very, very easy to drink, but if served with something really, really creamy, it could potentially clash. I guess we'll have to find out. I have been very busy in the kitchen and prepared several dishes to pair and taste test with this champagne. Let's see how it goes. First up, Triple Cream Brie. Triple Cream Brie is a very, very popular pairing partner for champagne. I got the goat Brie because it's a little grassier, a little earthier, and I thought it might be an interesting experiment. Everyone is kicking carbs to the curb lately, but there's a reason why so many wine-friendly foods like cheese and cured meats are served with toast or crackers. It's not just so the restaurant can charge you $20 for a tiny cheese plate and a heaping bread basket. I learned in my sommelier school that bread acts like a cushion for flavor. Now think about that. Yes, you sit on a cushion, just like this Brie is sitting on a cracker, and just like a piece of salami slowly melts onto a toasted piece of crusty bread, but a cushion also raises you up, and it makes you feel more comfortable. When you have intense and palpable qualities in a wine, such as acidity, bitterness, tannin, and effervescence, or similarly intense flavors in food, or even textural elements like greasiness, creaminess, fattiness, a little bit of bread works just like a cushion to raise up those flavors, but also make them feel more comfortable in your mouth. Acidity is a good thing. It helps keep the wine fresh and our palates feeling clean. It's also very important for digestion. If your wine and cheese combination seems balanced in terms of intensity and flavor, but something feels a little bit off in the texture, consider a carb. Try it on a cracker. This pairing works beautifully because the texture of that triple cream brie really blankets your palate, which helps to temper and soften the bubbles of the champagne, allowing the fruity and toasty notes to really come out. I'd have another one, but I have more to do. Macaroni and cheese, a truly quintessential pairing for champagne. I made my grandmother's recipe, which is baked with sharp cheddar and butter and not a lot of milk, so it's extra crispy and more solid than saucy. This easy to slice and solid format made it very easy to sneak out of the refrigerator in the middle of the night when I was hoarding food as a gluttonous preteen. I'd like to say those days are over, but the only difference is no one's paying attention. You can find the recipe for this macaroni and cheese on the DiVino blog. It's life-changing. Macaroni and cheese will never be the same again. But don't come crying to me when your pants don't fit. So, how does champagne pair with Mama Shirley's baked macaroni and cheese? Well, the bubbles do slice straight through that unctuous, greasy quality of the butter and the cheese. But interestingly enough, this pairing actually does more favors for the wine than it does for the macaroni. So there's a crunchy topping sprinkled with herbs. You know, the classic Italian blend. It's kind of sweet, grassy, and savory. So when the wine hits and the fizz washes away, it's almost like an aromatic green return of the tide. To give you a better idea of why this pairing works or how it works, have you ever had an apple and cheddar cheese sandwich? They were really big in the Midwest. The apple really slices straight through the cheese, but man, does that apple sing. The fruit in this champagne really pops. Good job, Shirley. She's probably watching from that gigantic mall up in the sky, mortified by my outfit and really wishing I wasn't drinking on TV. Macaroni and cheese and fried chicken tend to show up at a lot of the same parties. They've got quite a bit in common. There's that crispy, fatty layer and something juicy underneath. In the case of the fried chicken, you've also got those burnt little bits of batter that kind of echo the toasted bread notes in the champagne. It's a really lovely play. The acidity and the fizz of the champagne really does polish that deep-fried feeling from your palate from all the fried chicken. But beware of too much contrast. Classic fried chicken really is a comfort food, so unless you're loading up on hot sauce, while there is quite a bit of textural element, the fattiness, the crispiness, the actual flavors and the intensity of the flavors is really quite soft and kind of easygoing. You might try an older vintage of champagne or an extra dry or a dry, which are a little higher up on the sugar scale than the Brut and the extra Brut, and my personal favorite, Brut Sauvage. You can read more about the sugar scale and labeling of champagne and other sparkling wines on the DiVino blog. The link is right down there in the description. Now, if you're eating hot chicken, that is another story altogether. You are going to need some extra flavor and some silkiness to really balance that out. You might try a rosé champagne with a little bit of age on it. The silkiness and the touch of residual sugar and that fruity quality will really stand up nicely against all that extra heat. As I mentioned earlier, beware of putting too much tartness, acidity, and effervescence together, and beware of too much contrast. Sometimes sweet with sweet is a safer way to go. But I did come up with something to pair with our very classic Brut Reserve. It's thematic and nostalgic. Who remembers Snap, Crackle, Pop? It's got a subtle toasty quality and a chewy sweetness where all those tiny bubbles will really meet their match. Rice Krispie treat, meet Billecart-Salmon Brut Réserve. So that's it for today, everyone. I have really enjoyed taste testing all these champagne and food pairings and sharing them with you. Remember, you can read more and check out some recipes at the DiVino blog. The link is right down there in the description. And of course, if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and always share in the comments what you like to eat with champagne and if you tried any of my recipes and how they worked out. See you later.